Okay, good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name's David. Hello. Good to be here with all of you. And to get the meeting underway, I've asked our friend Vil to read the AA preamble, which is should be up there on the screen.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Vil. I'm an alcoholic. AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Vil, thank you so much. And before we go any further, why don't I'm going to invite everybody to join me in connecting with our higher power with the reciting the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. I think everybody knows this, but just in case we're a line by line big book study, and we are kind of cracking what I feel is when I was first introduced to this practice was it really kind of cracks the code of the big book and opens up not just its deeper meaning, but its ability for, at least for me in my walk with helping other alcoholics, to really leverage the book, use the book as my primary tool for sharing this spiritual program of recovery. And as I've shared before, we categorize the text 5 different ways, and you see that on your screen: questions, directions, and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And as you can see there as well, the colors are what I choose to use for highlighters for 2 reasons. One is it really helps me reference the text quickly, and it feeds my insatiable obsession for office products. So, with that, what we are doing today is the format is I'll share until about 7 o'clock, hopefully no later, because we're not covering a lot of text today. And then we'll open it up for your thoughts, questions, discussions, so forth. The meeting, as I always mention, the meeting is recorded, and we have a YouTube archive. Only my part is recorded, so you don't need to worry, and that's just to respect the anonymity of while we do stay completely within the boundaries of the traditions in recording the meeting. Because that's audio only. I just want to respect the comfort level of everybody else who's here, so in case folks don't want to be recorded or so forth. Anyway, so today, as I mentioned, we are on page 60, and if you were here last week, you'll remember that what we did is we began chapter 5, how it works, and we really covered well, we had already begun chapter 5, but what we focused on last week were the 12 steps as Bill lists them there. And so, having summarized pretty much the entire AA program with a point by point overview of the 12 steps, Bill is now, we'll see, quick to assure the reader that despite and the word he frequently uses is drastic, despite the drastic nature of the 12 steps, these 12 actions, he reminds us we should approach these principles as ideals, not as absolute rules or doctrine. And while such openness and flexibility is vital, Bill is equally quick to direct our attention and our energies back onto the program of action. So he's saying, yes, there's some flexibility here, but that doesn't mean being passive. We have to take action and keep focused on action. And anyway, he in the text today he focuses us on action. Excuse me, by letting us know that any wish for lasting sobriety must be rooted in a total surrender to God. And the kind of surrender that we need, it will only bear genuine fruit for us after we've undertaken all 12 of the action steps that Bill just outlined. From here, Bill then helps us to strengthen our commitment to that action by directly confronting the toxic patterns of self-seeking behavior that regularly prevent us alcoholics from being in true partnership with the people and institutions around us. And so with that, what I'm going to do is jump into the text, and I'll just, as I said, I'm going to the top of page 60, right after step 12, which we read last week, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, just I said this last week, I'll mention it again before I jump in. One of the reasons I'm going a bit more slowly here today, too, is obviously, if you've been around AA for any length of time, you've heard how it works read hundreds, if not thousands of times. And so, and most of us here could probably recite it in our sleep. That said, what I found was the same sort of principle of what happens when you take the text slowly unfolded for me just the same as with how it works. Meaning that when I looked at the deeper implications of what was going on, this became fresh and new in a way that now when I hear how it works, it means something completely different to me than it did just a short time ago. And that's after decades in the program. So Bill then, he outlines the 12 steps, and then he says, many of us exclaimed, what an order, I can't go through with it. And that is a warning, of course. It's a brief warning. One of the things I like, though, is that Bill is, and we've seen this time and time again, Bill has this habit of kind of juxtapositioning empathy with direction. It's like, we know where you're at, we understand, we're with you, get to work. And so he empathizes with us if we might be overwhelmed, especially if we're hearing the steps for one of the first times. And he says, do not be discouraged. And this is, the next few sentences are explanation. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. So that's all explanation. The next sentence, however, I'm taking, and I'll explain why, as a reward. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. You could take that as explanation. You could take it as direction. I tend to take it as a reward. Why? Because even though I read that line and I heard that line for years, and I said, okay, yeah. I'm willing to grow along spiritual lines. When you actually looked at my track record, the actual willingness to grow, to do the action that required genuine spiritual growth, only happened through the grace of God. Not my, see, and again, how my disease will often manifest is not in resistance to the program, but in quite the opposite, in total buy-in, but buy-in in a way that indicates that I'm running the show here, like I'm doing it. I'm like, how many times, again, not to criticize at all, but how many times have we heard an alcoholic say something to the effect of, well, I'm sober today because I choose to be sober. And that's not, I'm not saying this is a horrific crime against sobriety, but think about it though, when our book tells us we've lost the power of choice concerning drink. So, at some level, if I really believe I'm choosing to be sober, what I found is I'm discounting the grace that I have been given, the unmerited gift that is allowing me to make use of these tools one day at a time. And that same principle is at work when I read, the point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. I'd love to say that this commitment to spiritual growth is about my commitment to be a great person. But the reality is, knowing my patterns today, my ego can quickly hijack that intention and turn it to its own purposes. And so I give thanks for the gift of being willing to grow along spiritual lines. And then the rest, the next two sentences are further explanation. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Now, I hope I don't sound too dogmatic on this one, but I think it's important that we look closely at that last line to understand what it is saying and what it is not saying. Because how often have I said to myself and out loud in meetings, well, you know, it's progress, not perfection. Okay. Well, in fairness, there are places where it does indicate it's progress, not perfection, primarily in the 12 and 12. Okay? And when it's talking about the removal of character defects and so forth. But I need to be careful that I'm not doing two things. That I'm not using that as an excuse or validation for avoiding action and avoiding responsibility. Secondly, and I think more important, it says we claim spiritual, they're talking about spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And so it's not just about, it's about focusing on the spiritual principles that I'm living by or not living by, that underscore, that inform my behavior, that influence my behavior. And here's the other thing. Why? Let's think about, so I said two things, I lied, three things. The third thing is remember where this sentence is used. It's used in a paragraph that is attempting to reassure new alcoholics who may be discouraged, who may feel discouragement that this program is too hard or too involved for them in order to practice it. And what he's saying is, whoa, we just take it easy and we stay comfortable where we are. No, he's not saying that. What he's saying is that, hey, for those of you who may be feeling genuine discouragement at this moment, please know that while we aim for perfection, while we aim for it, we don't claim it. We don't say, I'm perfect, I've got it. It's almost like saying, an analogy I use, and this may not resonate with some people, but it's almost like if I don't really buy lottery tickets, but if I bought a lottery ticket, my aim in buying that lottery ticket is to win the whole jackpot. It's the difference between claim and aim. My aim is to win the whole thing, the whole enchilada. But I'm not going to, let's say I got a couple numbers right and I won a couple $100. I'm not going to claim, I'm not going to go around saying, hey, I won the lottery. I won the whole prize. And I would be deceiving myself and you. So it's the difference between what I claim and what I aim for. And when we get to the 12 and 12, the 6th and the 7th step make it very clear. You know that perfection thing that we've been avoiding? That needs to be our goal. We need to aim for that. And so moving on, I'll talk more about that when we get to the 6th step. The next little paragraph is further explanation, so green, our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. So what Bill has done with that paragraph, he's taken a step back, because remember, we talked about last week, Bill felt that in order to move forward, we needed a roadmap of the entire program. Okay, and he gave us our roadmap. He gave us an outline of the 12 steps. Okay? Okay. Roadmap in hand. We're getting back to work. And where's that work focused? He's going to tell us where we've come so far and what we have to do now. And that is that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. And that's a warning. And he's basically summarizing the first step. And now he's summarized, and now with B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, another warning, which is, I would say, the first part of the 2nd step. So we have this disease, our lives are completely out of control, and neither we nor another human being can fix it. And then and you could call A, B, and C directions. I just like to think of them as 2 warnings and a reward. And the reward is C, that God could and would if he were sought. here's the thing. I spent years avoiding the steps, avoiding a thorough undertaking of the steps, while at the same time telling myself I was seeking God. And so I was meditating, I was listening to tapes by spiritual teachers, I was going to meditation practice. Now, I'm not inferring that any of those things are bad. Okay, they're good, they're great. And you know, like today I have a spiritual life that's outside of AA. But for the purposes of, but I was telling myself I'm fulfilling what it says, that God could and would if he were sought. But what they're talking about here is the way that we seek God is through the action of the 12 steps. Because remember, what does step 12 tell us? We have a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So in terms of our alcoholism, how we seek God is we do inventory, we make amends, we surrender, all of that stuff. That is how we seek God. So the next sentence is a direction or an explanation. So it's green. Being convinced, we were at step 3. And I think it's in italics because Bill is saying we're back to action. We are back to action, folks. And think about that term as well, being convinced. How many times did I generate and magnify heartache for myself and the newcomer I was trying to help when it was clear to me and perhaps to that newcomer that they weren't convinced of those 3 things? That they maybe were here because they had a bit of chaos in their life, but they weren't convinced that no human power could relieve their alcoholism. And they weren't convinced that God could and would if he were sought. So what it's saying is that it's almost like when you get on the amusement ride, what do? There's a ticket taker there. They take your ticket and you get on the ride and you do the Ferris wheel. Being convinced is sort of the ticket taker. Are you convinced? If when you're working with somebody, now I'm not saying you fire them or whatever, but if somebody's not convinced, it's going to be very difficult to do a thorough 3rd step and certainly a thorough 4th and 5th. So being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Okay. Some of you may notice a difference that I did not pick up on until just recently, which is we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. When you go to the 12 and 12 and it lists step 3, it says something different. It's not the same 3rd step. Let's look at it. And you don't have to go there. I'm just going to jump to page 34 in the 12 and 12, where it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Notice that that short phrase, the care of, is not in the big book. Now, I tried to look into see if there was any, Bill had ever done a testimony later on, or gave me a speech where he talked about why he added the care of. So I'm just going to speculate based on other things Bill has said about the 12 and 12, is that after, and he wrote it, remember, after 15 years or so sober, or he started writing it, and my guess is what he realized was that he needed to focus alcoholics on the actual taking of the steps, and that it could sometimes get a little bogged down in the theoretical by just, and at times saying we turn our will and our life over to God as we understand Him. It is easy for me to say, well, I don't understand this God yet, so I'm going to hold off, or I'm just going to ponder, because how many of us have heard ourselves, maybe, or others at times, saying, well, I'm just focused on the first 3 steps right now. And so it's that, and they call it the AA waltz, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And what Bill is saying, I believe, by adding the care of, I then have to ask myself, how does God care for me? Well, for the purposes of my alcoholism, God cares through me only one way, through bringing the 12 steps into my life. So what does that mean? And that's supported by the book a little further on, because it says this step will have little lasting impact unless followed by an immediate course of action. So the third step is really about the commitment to undertake the rest of the steps in a timely manner. So anyway, moving on. So just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? So that's a question in orange. The first requirement is that we be convinced. You know what? Let's do this. I was going to do the next paragraph, but I'd rather hold off because we're at almost the top of the hour. And I think, anyway, or at least I hope, that what I've put out there is enough to generate your thoughts and conversations, and maybe your opinions, or your contradictions, which I'm totally open to. And there are some big chunks in that next paragraph, and it's not a short paragraph. So I'd rather just hit that next week and leave it there for now. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to you to share on the bit that we've read, which is only a couple paragraphs, but I think real critical stuff, and to share your thoughts and experience with that.